I'm curious, what happened to you guys in the late 2010s that compelled you to start the Woke Salaryman?
Wow. Okay, I think like in 2014, like my mom had a stroke, right? And then so it kind of like forced me to pursue financial freedom, like at the early stage, because I didn't want to be like a burden to my family. Maybe it's like a very Asian thing. You don't want to be a burden to your families, right? So I mean, in the process of doing so, I learned like how to be financially free, like the principles, the habits and stuff. And then at some point I noticed that quite a lot of people like around my age were not actually very financially savvy.
Like
So
me, who
yeah,
was
like
his friend at the time. Then I always ask him stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean we thought of creating like something that would make personal finance like really, really accessible. And then I guess that's how the early beginnings of the Woke Salarymen were.
Yeah, because Ruiming is a copywriter, and at the time I was studying to be an artist. My dream was to be an animator. So I'm a very visual learner, and so his kind of founding trauma, which he will laugh when I say this, is that his mom had a stroke. But for me, it was something different. It was that I graduated from university, and I realized I had a debt of 25,000 Sing dollars, and I don't know, when I signed up for the debt and the program, the uni thing, like it never crossed my mind that this is something I will have to deal with eventually. But when you graduate, then suddenly you have this thing and it's under your name. I got very worried. So I started asking him a lot about finance stuff. Then he would send me all kind of things like articles about finance and stuff that honestly it's just very difficult to read for me. I'm a very visual learner. So when you read financy stuff, there's so much jargon, so much like acronyms like STI, ETF for Singapore, then there's a S&P 500 and even ETF. I didn't know what these things are.
Like what's the index fund? What's the unit trust?
Yeah, it's very
What is the
complex.
mutual fund?
So I always wish that there was a visual thing. So I think I'm happy that for the past 5+ years now, we've been able to make stuff that I wish existed when I was a fresh graduate.
Yeah, and I think it's not just like how complex the topic is, it's also answering many of the very, very big questions you have when you're youth, like why is the world so unfair, right? What should I actually do first when it comes to building wealth, or like why is wealth even worth pursuing? Or maybe stuff like how come there are so many foreigners, coming to my country, stealing our jobs, like how come they get paid higher? So I think this book tries to answer all of that from that perspective, because I feel sometimes when you feel like the world is unfair, you can become very bitter, and actually that is like a huge stumbling block preventing you from actually making your life better.
For this episode of Paano Ba To, I'm speaking with the two-man team behind the Woke Salaryman, Choon and Ruiming. Based in Singapore, they do the Woke Salaryman as a side hustle to help people make better financial and life choices through education. They believe that when people are financially stable, they're able to make more rational and wiser decisions, not just for themselves, but for society. On that note, happy 5 years to the Woke Salaryman.
Thank you.
And you did mention it. Congratulations on the book. Yay.
Thank you very much.
Because you mentioned it, to everyone listening, I did want to share with them the titles of the chapters, because I feel like even if you are writing this from the perspective of being in Singapore, which is a first world country, and the listeners of this podcast are from the Philippines, a developing country or a third world country, you share basic truths that I think a lot of people in their 20s and 30s, even 40s, can relate to. So the chapter titles: Chapter 1, Accept That Life is Unfair. That's chapter 1 right away. A chapter title that you wouldn't expect in a finance, quote-unquote, book. Chapter 2 is Start Your Financial Revolution. Chapter 3, The Realities of the 2020s. And Chapter 4, Be Wealthier Than the Rich. So this book has your content for the past 5 years, but structured in such a way. What's the story with that?
Well, I think sometimes when we create like social content via social media, because of the social media algorithms, people see like bits and pieces of the content. And I think like viewed individually, the content can actually be harmful, especially if you don't view it like in the context of a bigger picture. For example, maybe if you see a piece about investing, right? And then like the algorithm doesn't show you like other aspects. You might think investing is like the be all and end all. Or you might do it before, let's say, you start building your emergency funds, or whether you settle your insurance. Or you might think like, actually, I should just need to do investing. Like earning a good salary is not important. So actually, this book tries to put everything we want to say to a young person like into kind of like a structured form so that they can follow like step by step on what to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of times also like the people who tend to look up our genre. I'm not saying self-help, I'm not saying economics, but I mean more like economics or like personal finance, self-enrichment or like self-improvement kind of thing. They tend to be people who already uh are kind of at a certain point where they have gone past the point of why like the world is so unfair and stuff. And we thought it was very important to begin the book with the first chapter to say accept that life is unfair, because that's where we were as well. We didn't have super rich parents that gave us everything and gave us all the world had to give us, we saw our peers who had much more richer families like having nice things, and we felt like, hey, why is this so unfair? And then there's actually a crossroad that, like we got to when we were in our 20s. It's like you could either stew in that anger and let it consume you, or let it be who you are, like complaining about why the way the world is the way it is. Or the other way was that then you understand what it is like, then you work to maybe play by the rules of the game in a way that doesn't like go against your own values, accrue resources, then later when you have resources, for example, to start your own company, you then go and set forward the kind of thing that you would like to see in the world, to be the kind of change that you
Yeah,
seek.
it's like the famous quote that always is wrongly attributed to Gandhi, right? Like you must be the change you want to see in the world. I mean,
So it's Gandhi's.
no, he didn't say it.
Or somebody else said
But
it.
people
Say Gandhi
people
said
always
it.
say Gandhi said, but
He
it's unverified.
didn't?
It's
Who
unverified. It's
said it? Oh,
unverified.
it's unverified.
Yeah.
Just
Oh,
a wise man that was
unverified.
anonymous.
Yeah, but I know some cool guy said it, but then everyone attributed it to Gandhi, but we're not sure whether he actually said it.
Right.
Yeah. But I think also we wanted to be different from other personal finance books because a lot of them was just like very factual. They'll tell you like what is a unit trust, what is a stock. So these are things you can already find on Investopedia on the internet, on the YouTube. We wanted something slightly more like philosophical, understand like why you must actually accrue wealth in the first place, and to overcome the very negative feelings. Like some people that feel like there's shame behind building wealth, wanting a better life for yourself because people feel like it's being it's being greedy. So we just wanted to address all these things in
So instead of just the what and the how, it's also the why, which I think is sometimes very important. Like you can give people all the ingredients and the formulas to success, but if they don't buy it, they don't believe it, they don't believe in themselves to be able to change their fate, then what's the point? But it's also interesting, Bianca, that you said that it was sort of relevant to you as well from the perspective of Philippines. So like we have quite a bit of a Filipino following, and we've always been very grateful for it. But we've never specifically tried to make our content work for like another market, because we just make stuff that but I mean, we do have a bit of a expat or kind of a foreigner perspective, because I'm from Malaysia originally also. I'm still a Malaysian citizen, but I'm a permanent resident in Singapore. So I'm curious also, I don't know if this is the right avenue to ask. You can cut this out if it's not appropriate, but like I was wondering, like from your perspective, what is it like in Philippines generally, the personal finance kind of perspective and scene? What is it like?
I think the reason why a lot of Filipinos gravitate towards your content, despite being a different cultural perspective, is because you tie together finance and where you are at in life. A lot of Filipinos, myself included, are so able to relate to what you said about not being a generational wealth baby. Our parents put us to school, but we're not expecting any trust fund or whatever. I and my siblings personally had to work to get wherever we are now. And so you guys integrating financial advice with the reality of the world and our situation, I think is why Pinoys are like, I like these guys.
I see.
I think one thing I also noticed is that like around the world, like many youth in especially like capital or developed cities, they all have the same problem, right? Like housing is unaffordable, the wages are not keeping up with like rent or even housing prices. Things are kind of more expensive, and there are a lot of like inequality within the city. Like sometimes you have like very rich businessmen from a certain country. They drive nice cars, and then there you are, like stuck in traffic, you're taking the bus. It all creates like a very resentful
Right,
atmosphere
a lot of the
sometimes
problems are the same. It just manifests a little bit differently in
across the
whatever
cities.
local context, right?
Yeah, whether it's like Singapore, Manila, like Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah. So we look forward to really this Asian tour thing, that this little Southeast Asian tour, I would say, that we've been doing has been very insightful in terms of like seeing just how the same problems that we have here, like Ruiming was saying, like expensive housing, inequality and things, how it manifests differently in the Southeast Asian region, because we are very connected, but also very culturally different.
I think it's because also your examples are very specific that even if my situation is entirely different, the feeling is
The
very much the
feeling.
same. Yeah, like the
Mhm.
resentment that you said, it's something that a lot of us feel but don't verbalize because I guess there's shame as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I asked some people from our community to send in their questions for the
Oh,
Woke Salarymen.
Sure.
So
that's
if you are
awesome.
game to answer them.
Of
Yes,
course.
yes.
So the first question is from Christina Modina. What's very important money or business advice that you can give creatives or artists, especially those who do not have a business mindset?
Oh,
Wow. I mean, other than get a business mindset.
voila.
I mean, I know. But I think like the other important thing would be like increasing your knowledge in a certain field, like maybe develop a niche. I think nowadays you will find that just be creative in general is not enough. Creativity is a soft skill, and often you need to accompany that with a hard skill. So for example, let's say if you learn a lot about like learn a lot more about like the healthcare industry, right? Then you could use your creativity and apply it to, let's say, how you do like a certain medical procedure. I think that's where like you can find your niche. That's where you can get like clients who are willing to pay for your work. But of course, if you don't develop a niche, then you'll be competing with like tons of people around the world with no like unique selling point. It can be really, really hard for you to stand out. So I think one of the reasons, like I think why we have done okay so far is that we combine like our knowledge in, let's say, like economics, psychology, personal finance,
History.
history, like together with our own like creative skills that we learned in our previous jobs. So in a way, like we found our own niche, and I hope to whoever's been asking this question, like you can find your own niche too.
Yeah, my advice is somebody who's definitely not business minded. Not even now. I'm not even business minded now, even though I'm supposed to be running this thing with him to his probably chagrin and disappointment. Right. I think the best sort of perspective that has helped me the most, right, is to think about, it's gonna sound a bit off first, but I'll explain it. It's like turning your mindset from input to output in terms of the way that you charge. So when you first start out doing something, so I started out as an artist, I'm an illustrator, I still illustrate, right? And for example, you do commissions, like somebody pays you to do a drawing of maybe their character or something, right? So when you first start out, you'll be usually charging for your work, for the input that you put in. So the time that I put in to draw the thing. But where you want to be in order to, I think, succeed as a business is you have to think about output. So output means instead of charging you for the time and the amount of like mind muscle that I'm spending on drawing this thing, I want to charge you based on what you will get from my contribution. So if you sell it later on, you can make more money. And usually what happens is that when you can price yourself based on your output, you'll be able to charge more. And also it's a bit like what Ruiming was saying, that you'll be thinking more along the lines of what is my unique selling point. So instead of, for example, just like doing a drawing of a very complicated, let's say a ballpoint pen drawing, and I'm charging a lot because I'm telling you, look at all the lines that I put in. I should shift it so that I'm charging because my perspective and my style in terms of how I draw something is unique and nobody else draws like that. So I'm not charging anymore for the labor and the time that I spend. It can take me 5 minutes, but you want to pay me a lot of money because I'm the only person that can think of to even draw it like that. And sometimes the simpler stuff can also be the stuff that people want. The minimalist stuff can be the stuff that sells for the most amount of money. So I would say try to shift from input to output.
Yeah, but I think you kind of need some level of like empathy to do that, because if you cannot think from like your client's perspective,
Yep.
if you're always thinking from like what did I do and like how much I want to charge for it. You never think of like
Yeah.
what is the value
True.
brought to the other person. It can be really difficult to have this shift. So even empathy is something that we always use to, encourage like compassion, to others. It can also be used in
Sales negotiation, right? Yeah, charging.
in a business sense as well.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, when you guys were explaining that, I also am able to connect it to how Paano Ba To was built. It's very similar, that it started as a niche, and then I totally get what you say about input and output, because now, for example, putting together, let's say, a video will take me 15 minutes. I can't charge that I did it for just 15 minutes, because I will charge my 20 years of media experience to
For
be able
sure,
to do that
yes.
output in
Yeah.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Very,
Exactly.
very valuable advice. So in the starting years of the Woke Salaryman, when you were still trying to find that mix of earning, but at the same time staying with the core of the Woke Salaryman, were there any business decision mistakes or missteps that you did that you can share your learnings of?
I think in general, we were always in the ability to kind of like turn away clients that we didn't align with, but mostly because we were very like financially prudent in our own personal lives. And then we also like pursued Woke Salarymen as a side hustle. So there was never like big pressures to take on a client, even if we didn't align with it. So I think we turned down like most of the clients. But I think one near mistake we did was like almost working with a cryptocurrency
Oh,
company.
yeah.
Yeah. So this was like maybe 2009, before crypto went big. We thought of like, maybe exploring the possibility of working with a crypto company. But I think and we kind of like hesitated over like working in them, because crypto had this reputation for being extremely volatile, still is. And eventually we decided, you know what, let's just try taking a shot at it. So I think we worked with them for like, I think 6 months on one piece of content. It took 6 months because we were very particular on what we wanted to say, so that's why it took 6 months. But
The
eventually,
headline was why we would not put more than
5% in crypto.
5% in crypto. So it's like we were talking against crypto,
Yeah.
for crypto.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of like push and pull,
Yeah, but eventually the company went out of money.
Yeah, they just went out of business.
Yeah, and then that's when we realized, if we work with other clients in the future, and let's say people invested with them and they put a lot of money in the crypto platform as well, our readers will also lose money.
Yep.
So I think from there on, we decided to just not do any crypto related clients at all. Actually, even clients that we felt like did not have a good chance of like staying around long term in the market. So I think that was the closest that we came to like a big business mistake.
And I think like this is interesting in terms of like just generally when it comes to marketing for content creators also, because usually the companies with the most generous commissions or the biggest marketing budgets are the new ones, because they need to acquire new customers, so they're willing to give you a lot more money. But the potential risk of it is much, much, much higher. And we are not just like influencers in the sense that we're like celebrities that can promote a product, and then if the product turns out to be bad, that we can say, hey, I don't know, it's just endorsement. We have to own the understanding of what the product is, and that's our authenticity, and also like our integrity is very important. So we actually turn out a lot of like potentially very lucrative stuff for the long term, which I think has still worked out for now, because it's been 5 years.
Maybe
Who knows, we'll make it to
it's a
6.
mistake next time, cause
Yeah, maybe.
because y'all didn't take enough clients, then your
Yeah.
business shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know. We're like,
Let's see
the future is quick Sarah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, we're not going there. I do believe that integrity goes a very long way. Not just longevity, but also the kind of partners and followers that you attract. Next question is from Jansky Serda. How to balance between saving for the rainy day and still enjoy life?
Wow.
Ooh.
I actually think like, I mean, at least in Singapore, from what I've observed, like most people have a very twisted idea of what enjoying life is. Mostly because like social media has kind of like raised our expectations
Yeah.
of what it is to enjoy life. If enjoy life is like, for example, like a trip every 2 months, spending most of your paycheck, then I think I can firmly say like you are a victim of like over consumerism, right? If you're living paycheck to paycheck, I think that's also like a very clear sign. Or, you know, some people these days, even fresh graduates in Singapore, like once they graduate, they feel like at the end of the year they deserve a luxury bag, you know, like a $3,000 to $5,000
Yeah.
luxury bag to show that, you know, I'm a working adult now. So I think like if you peg your standard of enjoying life to what is considered by society to be normal now, I think you're in for a world of hurt, especially if you don't have the earning power to kind of like match up. I would say like you probably need to find what I feel is a more authentic kind of happiness, stuff that isn't just like fully defined by, you know, like money or like material wealth. I feel that there can be a balance between, you know, saving for a rainy day and also enjoying life now, but you will have to control, like, you know, you will have to be less dependent on money to enjoy life now. Some of the hobbies that I have are actually like not so expensive, right? Like watching the sunset, going for a walk. Like these things are not super expensive. So, and even stuff like buying a bicycle. So I mean now at 35-year-old, I do have some expensive bicycles. But technically the same route or the same cycling can be done with like
Any bicycle.
any bicycle
Yeah.
and it'll be fine. But it's all about like matching your expenses to where you are in life at the moment. Like if you earn, let's say $1,000 a month, then you buy what is appropriate for $1,000. Find what is activity that can be done with that budget.
Yeah.
If you think about it, like a long time ago, way before we had like phones or like all this new technology, a Netflix account, like people in ancient times already found happiness, right? And a lot of it was linked to contentment. So I feel nowadays with like the current climate of social media, what people need is more contentment, more gratitude versus, you know, constantly chasing after the more and more expensive.
Sometimes it's like validation also. You want other people to see that you have this thing,
Yeah.
which I kind of understand too.
Mm.
But I completely agree lah. I think like some of the best things in life are free. Of course, I think everybody will have some vices or some hobby that might not be perfect in terms of
Yeah.
min-maxing your whole life. And I don't think we believe in that either. Like that you must be this personal finance monk that only does the most like essential things. We also do indulge in some things. Like for example, I like video games. So sometimes I buy video games without even thinking much about it when I shouldn't. But I'm also human, right? I like to tell people we are not the Woke Salarymen. The Woke Salarymen is an ideal and is our name of our company and the platform. But we are not perfect people ourselves too. So like I think what Ruiming said about curating who you are and what you like is also very important. Like that the hobbies hobbies cost different things. I have been on the precipice of like appreciating and going deep into hobbies that I think I cannot afford. For example, I can appreciate nice watches. I can appreciate them very, very much. I watch YouTube videos. I'm subscribed to these things. The algorithm also recognize that I like these things. Same with cars. I like cars a lot. But I know that in the grand scheme of things, like the priceless things in life that are free that I love, like being able to afford a certain kind of lifestyle with my family, would mean that I shouldn't get into cars in a big way. I shouldn't get into watches in a big way that I have like more than 6 in my collection. So I just appreciate it from a distance lah. Like for example, my nephew is into Rubik's Cube now. And I went to Google the most expensive Rubik's Cube you can find, like in terms of function. And like under $100, you can get a pretty damn good one already.
Yeah.
So maybe you can curate some hobbies. You can look around. You don't have to treat hobbies like a muse thing. Because life has to be enjoyed, but oftentimes a lot of the enjoyable things in life are free. So if you have to spend money to a point where it's unsustainable or you have to borrow money to get that happiness, there's probably something else out there for you that you don't have to borrow money to enjoy.
Yeah, I will add on is like sometimes the irony of it is that you need to actually have money to spend on these things until you realize, oh, actually the simple thing was okay.
True.
So for example, like I used to ride like a $300 bicycle. Then eventually I bought more expensive and more expensive bicycles. But then one day I was riding my expensive bicycle. And then I was just thinking, hey, actually, this is not much different from that $300 bicycle I had. So why did I come up here in the first place, right? But sometimes it takes a while before you
So you're
realize
saying we should just go and spend first, then see.
No, that's not. I'm just highlighting
sometimes it do be like that.
the irony of the situation.
Right,
but if you can realize from the very beginning, which I think is a special skill, like, oh, actually this $300 bicycle is enough, then I think you'll be doing like a great service to yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you could either like learn from other people's experience or you could try find out the hard way. I mean, both are valid ways to learn, right?
Mm.
Yeah, and I mean, it also seems like financial independence or financial wellness is very much linked with self-awareness,
Yeah, it is.
self-acceptance,
It is.
right? Like
Yeah.
it seems like when we're secure with ourselves, then it would be easier to manage this
Yep.
saving between the rainy days versus enjoying life
Yeah.
balance.
It also depends actually how much money you have, right? Like, actually, there's nothing wrong with liking nice cars and buying nice cars if you can afford it. It's just that if you have to give up a lot in life that to the point where you're unhappy, like you gotta work overtime, you gotta work 3 jobs just to get this nice car, then maybe, it's not that good after
Yeah, I
all.
really like what you say about like self-awareness. So nowadays, like there are a lot of advertisements in Singapore asking you to go on holiday. And they always use this line saying like, oh, you deserve it, you deserve a holiday. But honestly, like the copywriters behind those advertisements, like they know nothing about you. They don't know whether you really deserve a holiday. What if you didn't deserve a holiday, right? What if you just came back from South Korea, you burned through like 3 months of your savings, you are like 10K in credit card debt. Do you deserve a holiday at this point? I mean,
Probably not.
probably not, right? And the copywriters won't behind the ad. They probably won't know that.
It's just an ad.
Yeah,
right?
they're just trying to make you buy more plane tickets. So sometimes like
Yeah.
having self-awareness is
It's
really
like the
important.
devil on your shoulder.
Yeah.
They say, hey, you deserve it, you should do it.
Yeah.
Then they get the commission if the ad does well.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why capitalism. So that's why this book, Crash Course on Capitalism, we won't have enough time to discuss that now, but like bigger picture, right? Gives
Yeah.
you
Yes.
some perspective on your personal finances. Okay, another question. 2 questions actually, but almost the same from Kat Manaig and Geraldine Damaso. Any words of encouragement for breadwinners? How to still prioritize oneself while providing the needs of the family?
I would think breadwinners definitely need to prioritize themselves first, especially if they're like the only breadwinner. I've seen cases where, sole breadwinners are like forced to kind of like fund a whole family, and the family might not always have like the best spending habits, but because they do it out of like, like loyalty or like love or like filial piety. But I think you have to realize like at some point, like if the amount of like spending becomes like ridiculous, you could even be in like a abusive relationship where people take advantage of you. And I think even among like super close family members, like even among family, like there are lines that should be drawn, right? Just because like, for example, just because your parents like push you out into this world doesn't mean like you owe them like your whole life, right?
A country club membership.
Yeah, it doesn't mean like they are like the shareholder of your life. Like for the rest of your life, whatever you earn doesn't mean like you must give like 50% to your parents. I mean, of course, unless if they help you and stuff, yeah, then you should probably give back. But I think there's a point to filial piety, there's a point to loyalty, and at some point you should learn to cut yourself off, or I mean that's the most extreme option, but just saying no, right?
But you're talking about in a situation whereby you are the primary breadwinner, but then your family members are having lifestyles that are
beyond
unsustainable.
Right. I mean, because in Singapore we also have this thing called like the sandwich generation. I think many people in the Philippines have it also. And yeah, the burden is always on like the breadwinner to kind of like solve the sandwich generation problem.
Sacrificing their own dreams sometimes.
Yeah,
right?
but actually solving the sandwich generation, which is a multi-generational problem, it's a multi-generational effort as well, right?
It's a team thing, right?
Yeah, like your parents need to do their part, you need to do your part, and then if you have kids, like they need to do their part as well. If not, you like put all the burden on like the sole breadwinner, and sometimes when you overload someone, they just collapse and just.
It's a bit like you're in a plane, right? Then they say you tend to yourself first before you give to the child. Because if you are not able to work anymore, your mental health, all this, then the whole family also don't get to eat.
Exactly.
I feel like if you are the one that's providing, you should have the ability to say, hey, can you not spend on this?
Yeah.
Hey, can you not spend on that or not?
Yeah.
Because like I'm the only one doing it. So if you want to do that, maybe you go and do some part-time thing on your own. Then you go and buy it with that money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But of course, please don't use this to kind of like cut off your because sometimes people will take this advice and say like, I'm gonna abandon my parents, and Woke Salarymen says, okay, I mean we're not saying that. I just want to disclaim that first.
Yeah.
Yeah, you actually had a a comic about that, about not spending time with family because they're always at work. It was on your website, social media. It's in the book if people are interested, and that really hits close to home, especially for a lot of Filipinos who are in their 20s, work, and then they feel so guilty for not having time for the family dinners, holidays with family. Have you both experienced something like that?
So I have, and it's not just work, it's because my family's in Malaysia. So the reason why I'm in Singapore is because when I was 7 years old, my mom sent me here to study because she felt like having a Singaporean English first education would be better for me. So fast forward, by the time I was 18, I was moved out of my house and I was like staying in Singapore by myself. And what that has caused is like a cultural rift between my family and me, where even though like I can go back to spend time with them, I honestly am much more comfortable at home here in Singapore. I say that honestly, and I feel a lot of guilt for not going back home. A lot of times it's because I'm working as well. And I think everybody has it different. It also depends on the way that you were raised. When I was raised, my parents were both working and they both spent a lot of time working away. So I'm kind of used to it. But I don't know, maybe it's kind of like sometimes the content that I consume or I see like on Instagram, my peers also like spending time with their families. And then now my wife also is very close with her family. They spend a lot of time together, sometimes too much to the point where I'm like, why are we sitting here for 5 hours? But that's just their culture, you know what I mean? Like it's always different when you go with an in-law situation. But it makes it very starkly, I'm very starkly aware that my family don't have this kind of continuity. So I don't know where to resolve it. When I go home, I would sometimes like I think it comes across when I text my mom and dad sometimes that they will assure me, they'll tell me it's okay if you're working, you don't need to come back so much. And that makes me feel bad. But I think also they kind of get it. I think there's no right answer, and you shouldn't just look at somebody else's situation and say that, hey, you're not spending enough time or you should work harder. Every family is different, and I think the only thing that you have to consider is that there's a finiteness to all this, because one day we will all go someday. I wouldn't say who go first, but usually your parents go first. So family is still important, and you need to be able to spend quality time. Maybe you think about it that way. So let's take quantity out of the equation. We think about quality. What is an example of quality time and how do you do that? Recently, Ruiming had done this thing where he went overseas with his parents, and it's something that I really want to put together. Even though I think actually probably if I had to go on holiday with my mom and dad and my wife together, it will probably not be pleasant while we are doing it.
Oh, it's not pleasant.
But later on, like in hindsight, it would be like, I'm so happy that I did this, even though I didn't enjoy it at the time. So these are the kind of things that are rolling around my head more and more. So it's a good question, and we can't answer it. But at least they're thinking about it. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think how I think about it is that I use money to kind of like buy time with my parents. So I mean, when it comes to money, I also feel like use it to buy time, but you don't spend too much time earning money. So there's kind of like a sweet spot. So I just earn enough money for me to buy freedom of time for myself, but I don't need more money to be happier and happier and happier. So let's just say, let's say I reach my financial targets and it's enough for me to every year take a month to, spend time with my family. I'll probably stop focusing on money so much at that point, as opposed to like some people just go on like straight all the way, right? Because money will never be enough. I think if you realize that the ability of money to buy happiness and buy time has limits, then you'll be a bit more like selective on how much time you spend pursuing money and how much more time you spend with your loved ones.
But what do you think, Bianca? Actually, I'm curious to hear your perspective, because obviously you're running this very big like podcast and you have so many followers on Instagram. How do you do it?
First of all, I loved your answers, and it allowed me to reflect a bit while you were speaking, because earlier we were like in talking about your financial independence, you have to be aware of where you are financially, but also you sharing this, it makes so much sense that you not just that, you have to think of also where you are in your relationships, whether it be family or friends, because we are all very, very different in that as well. I, for one, have been that hustle type of career person all this time growing up. But now that I am a mom to 2 kids and am happily married, for me, I feel that at 41, I've sort of earned that right to say no to some work engagements to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
able to
exactly.
prioritize watching my kids' piano recital
Yeah.
or something. Yeah.
Like maybe I've heard somebody, my friend told me that they likened it a bit like to, like when you're in your 20s and 30s, you are working on increasing the amount of money you earn per hour, so that later on in life, you can earn not more money, but you can earn the same amount of money using the less time,
Mm,
so that you can spend then the time that you save on the things that truly matter, that money cannot buy.
yeah.
Mm.
So maybe that's one way to
Yeah.
think about it also.
If you think about it, like how money has a diminishing
Yes, yes.
a marginal utility, I think like multi-millionaire and a billionaire probably have the same amount of free time if they choose to start working, or like between like 1 million and 2 million,
Yep.
it's around the same,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Or even stuff like, I mean, even if you go below that,
Mm.
so it's important to realize that at some point, money will stop being useful, and sometimes they really cannot buy relationships. So people often say like, money, you can use it to buy time, but they ignore like the time needed to build relationships. Like you can't turn like $1 million into good relationships with your family like
Yep.
overnight.
Doesn't convert.
Yeah,
Right?
that takes time and investment.
Yeah. These are definitely things to ponder for everyone listening right now. And I know you gave a lot of advice already, a lot of incredibly helpful perspectives. But just to wrap this conversation up, I wanted to ask to everyone listening now who is likely a Filipino in their 20s or 30s, who is sort of worrying about their financial future in whatever situation they're in. What are some words of wisdom you can share with them?
I think my advice will actually be the same as a Singaporean. I think we live in a globalized world and the competition is global. And for the longest time, the knowledge economy was dominated by developed countries like the West, Japan, South Korea. But I think now as more and more people, can get good skills, we can start to compete with like the people in those countries. Like the chance of a good life, even if you're born in a less developed country, like it's actually feasible that you could actually earn like a good income based on that. So I think it will be to definitely increase your skill set and go up the value chain. So that doesn't mean that means like upgrading your skills, doing stuff that other people cannot do, because now the competition is global. For people who want to like remain doing the same thing that they've been doing for years, I think that is possible, but then you also have to accept that you will earn less money simply because not because your job is less worthy or not important or whatsoever, but mostly because competition is global, and the more people who can do your job, the lower your salary will be. Did that help? I hope I answered the question. Yeah.
Yeah, like a little
Upskilling,
bit
definitely, for sure.
echoing, a little bit echoing what Ruiming said. I think the investment in yourself is very important. Because advice is very hard to give regionally, because in Southeast Asia, we are so different, even though we are so close together, and it would be a bit weird for me to give like very specific advice from the POV of somebody in Singapore earning Singapore dollars. We have our challenges as well, but I think universally speaking, like the best advice I can give is like to not underestimate your ability to grow and to improve. So there are so many things in life that you can get better at, like not just hard skills, but also soft skills, for example. How are you like as a person socially? Do you know how to read the room? Do you understand how to get a friend to change their bad habit and tell them something they don't want to hear, while have them absorbing it and not just like pushing it away? All these things will serve you very well, and you will have a lot of time to hone these things, but you must put in the work to always be a little bit uncomfortable, so that you're pushing yourself constantly. I wish we could just tell you what to do in terms of, people always ask us for like either stock tips or what is the next kind of sector that will earn a lot of money. It's pointless to give this kind of advice a lot of times, because we can't be specific,
These
because
are like crystal ball predictions.
yeah, like for example, in Singapore, the big sector used to be, for example, engineering. That was the big thing. Then engineering was big for a while. It moved to finance. Then now we're in like data, AI, and metaverse for a while also. So we don't know what the next thing will be. But if you stay curious, if you stay updated on global events, and also understand and build your skill set, hard and soft, like I think that is just timeless formula that will make it so that whatever age you are, as long as you keep giving yourself at least 20% of discomfort in your life to get better, like you will stay quite safe. I think that's just generally what I can say. Yeah, because we don't know enough about the Philippines, and maybe next time we go there, then we talk to more Filipinos, we understand, then we can give more specific advice, but that's as much as I think I can say for now. Yeah.
No, that advice is so, so, so good. It's definitely a motivation, right? That all of us can get better and upskill to compete in this changing world, whatever industry we're in. So yeah, thank you so much, Ruiming and Choon. I super enjoyed this conversation.
Same, Bianca. Thanks so much for having us.
It is really tough talking about money, not just at work, but even with family, partners, or friends, when in fact we should be talking about money more, precisely because we all have challenges when it comes to finances. So yes, we accept that life is unfair, as Ruiming and Choon point out, but we don't have to do it alone. May it be for financial matters or life in general, that's what our core people are for, and that's what platforms like Paano Ba To and the Woke Salarymen are for. And anyone listening to this who has a platform or brand or community, that is why you're here too. Special thanks to Fully Booked for connecting us with the Woke Salarymen, Ruiming and Choon. Paano Ba To is created and hosted by me, Bianca Gonzalez, with podcast producer Annika Neri and edited by Paulo Khalili. Till our next episode, stay super, supers! How are you able to stay good friends despite working together?
Wow, I think Choon and I do have like many disagreements. I think we disagree maybe like twice a month or something.
Twice a month very good already for business owners.
Yeah, but I mean, mostly because like we talk often, we are quite aligned on things. And whenever, even if we disagree or we can't find an agreement after long discussions, I just trust him enough to not mess up things, because like I know like at his heart he just cares about the business as well, and we're after the same thing. He
Yeah.
just does it in a different way, and no one can have their way all the time, right? If you have your way all the time, it only builds resentment. So I think what often happens is like we will let each other have their way, but if something doesn't turn out well, the person must take ownership.
Yeah.
So like for example, I try something, it doesn't work, I'll be like, yeah, okay, we tried that was my idea, I take accountability. It wasn't so good. I think it works both ways as well.
Yeah, I think it helps also that, well, I'm not a good friend, I think. I'm difficult to be with because I'm a bit more like stoic. I don't like say things like affection and things like that. But it's always assuring, because Ruiming will always tell me that we are friends first and business partners second. And I don't know if it's good advice or what, because we've heard a lot of our other peers who started companies with either their friends or people that they met, like who are not their friends, and it's so hard to find a good co-founder. So sometimes the bar can be so strangely low. Like there are people that act in very, very strange ways that cannot even be comprehended on that level. So it's just a lot of gratitude that I guess like one of my best friends happened to be sane enough that we can run a business for 5 years with. But definitely there are always problems in every single thing, So again, it comes back down to the fact that we understand that even when we disagree, we are all trying to work for the same goal, which is that our readers' lives is improved when they read our thing. What you say about ownership actually is quite interesting too. The idea that because now we also have other team members, I think it's important to let people own their stories that they write. So even if I disagree with something, I feel like if somebody else has written it, they get to say whether this thing goes or not. I can only give advice.
Within limits.
Within limits, of course. We won't. There's something, of course, we won't publish. We all know what those lines are, and we hire, for the most part, sane people that know where these lines are.
Sane people, yes.
Yeah. So as long as we are aligned on this big macro soft goal, which is that we must always benefit our reader, I think it's okay. Even if I disagree, it's okay lah. Ruiming can try his approach and let's see if it works or not.
Yeah, I think a lot of it helps that we work on being like personally, financially like prudent first, so that there isn't pressure to make like a lot of money from the business all the time.
Yeah.
So even we don't make like huge amounts of money, like we're okay.
Yeah.
And I guess that also ensures that the decisions we make won't differ too far, because sometimes the strongest emotions are like greed and fear, right? And if without like a high operating expense, there's not so much fear that the business will collapse within the year, right?
Yeah, we joke about the business collapsing all the time.
Yeah.
And perhaps we have this cavalier approach to it that makes it a bit lighter and easier for us to resolve some issues. Yeah, there's not so much like pressure in terms of like, the shareholders are not happy,
Yeah, because
or investors are pushing us to do this or that. It's just us.
Because at the moment we are the two shareholders.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.